Next session coming on, I'll introduce myself. I'm Tovit Neiser from Yellow Bricks Consulting. We help companies communicate their unique business story with their audience internally and externally. And for this first session, I want to introduce Yetunde Adeni from BMO. Here you go.
Okay. Hello. Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Yetunde Adeni. I work with Bank of Montreal in the People Analytics team. And I'm thrilled today to discuss leading with data, how we empower managers with People Analytics. Okay, so a brief introduction about myself. I've been in the HR space for over a decade. My background is core HR, and in the past 5 years, I've been working within the People Analytics team. And the reason why I would like to point out my background in HR is how it's helped me in my People Analytics role, because I'm able to, based on my background in HR, understand the problems or like the pain points within the business or what HR business partners face, and how in my role within the People Analytics team, I'm able to basically support them and build that, empower them with data in a very simplified way, because a lot of HR folks are not very data savvy. And we're trying to enable them and build that competency. So basically, that's how my background in HR has impacted or been helping within my People Analytics role. So yeah, I currently work with BMO. Prior to that, I worked with WorkSafe BC. I'm from Vancouver, so worked with WorkSafe BC, worked with Amazon. Yeah. So these are the expected outcomes after this session, but beyond this, and in my conversations, I've also explained this, that beyond this, I hope that at the end of this session, you're able to take out some key insights or projects that when you get back to your organizations, you'll be able to implement. That's what I look out for when I go for conferences like this. What are those insights? What are those initiatives that other organizations have put in place and I can also implement when I get to my organization? Okay, so to go into this, I would like to establish some very important foundation or basics. One is the fact that the roles of managers in every organization is very, very key and pivotal to the success of the business. A lot of organizations have missions, visions, the strategic goals they build every year, but it's basically the line managers, the leaders that make this happen in how they develop talent, from hiring to engaging them to performance management, and it's a whole lot of work. A lot of managers get into organizations from a specialist role, or even get into that role from a specialist role, and then they now have to add that capability of leading a team, developing a team, engaging the team, making things happen within the team. So it's a lot of moving parts to that role. But one point I want us to establish is the fact that line managers, business leaders are very, very key within an organization. And that's why it's, developing managers is one of the key focus or the key challenge of HR leaders. According to Gartner's report, leader and management development is one of the common HR challenges of leaders. This was the top number one priority for 2024, and the same for this year, because we've seen how it's key, their role is key, but also how do we develop them is also very, very important. Okay, so we've established the fact that managers are very, very important in organizations. We've established the fact that developing them is key. Now, how do we merge our roles as people analytics practitioners to developing this? We understand that great leaders drive business success, but do they have the right insights at the right time? Because it is one thing for them to have the right insight. Do they have it at the right time? Imagine running a team, making decisions, helping develop them. But the question is, do they get the right insight? Do they get the right data at the right time that they need to make those decisions? And that is where our role as people analytics come to play. How do we enable them? How do we empower them with the data? Some of them have those data, but do they have it at the right time? Do they use it effectively? Those are the questions I want us to ask ourselves as we go through this. Another part of this is there's, like I said, a lot of them have that data, but like, how do they manage get the information they have, making insights out of it? And I'll give an example. In one of the organizations that I worked in, one of the things that managers do is, unlike in some organizations wherein the manager would sit with the team member to say, what's going to be your goal for this year? In some organizations, like for me, for example, my first role within the HR space was working in the performance management team. And it was in the financial sector. And in my team then, or my role was basically to build key performance index for every role within the organization. So then you have to work with each manager. So if a manager, for example, has 20 roles within his team, the manager has to build goals for each of those 20 roles within his business. And then it is also his role to make sure that those information, those goals are met, creating action plans, breaking it into these are the daily tasks to achieve these goals. So the question now is, with people analytics and the data, how do we ensure that managers or leaders have those information, they're able to cut through through the noise? So imagine what a day in the life of a manager is like. When you think about, and it's also possible that some of us have teams that we manage. You're going to work, you're thinking about, oh, this is the goal, this is what we have to do. And then you get into work, it's, there's someone that has some engagement issues you need to focus on, or there's someone that has feedback, performance management issues that you need to focus on. The question is, how do you cut through all this noise? It's like driving in a fog and you're not clear in terms of how do I help, my team member, or how do I help people? So, I want us to look at this picture, and when you think about an organization that has 3,000 people, and then you have 300 managers, and you have 30 HR BPs or HR professionals, and 300 managers having to go through the decision on who should get promoted, who should I hire, or who should go for this training? Those are different questions that comes into the minds of managers. But imagine putting data in the hands of those 300 managers compared to putting data in the hands of HR professionals. Because I know that a lot of us probably work with HR BPs. You have the data, take it to the business. But I want you to imagine having those insights that those HR professionals, HR BPs have in the hands of 300 managers that can use that data effectively to make decisions. You would agree with me that you'd have much more impact with data in the hands of 300 managers compared to those data sitting in the hands of 30 HR professionals. And also with the 300 managers having those data, is a question of do they even understand how to use that data? Do they understand the insights they're getting from the data? And that's the power of data democratization, how you're able to put data in the hands of people. You get more impact with doing that. And I would give some examples. Like I said, for me, it's how can we practicalize this and think about what we're doing and how it's making impact. So Journey is a high-performing employee, and a lot of teams have Johnnies in their teams, came in on a Friday to inform their manager of their plan to resign. And they got an offer from another company. So we can look at this from two sides. Is it possible that the leader could have, predicted a time that Johnny was going to come to drop a resignation? It's very possible if the manager or if the leader is tracking in terms of data, like, oh, this is what's going on in the market. There's high attrition within this kind of role. So that's from like a predictive analytics perspective, which if the manager has that information, is able to like be proactive to stop something like this. That's on looking at it from one side. Another way to look at it is, let's look at a manager that makes decisions based on their gut feelings, and another manager that makes decisions based on data. So a lot of people have talked about AI. I'm also very interested in AI, so a lot of my images are from Midjourney, ChatGPT, Anyways, so let's think about a manager that makes decisions based on their gut feeling. What's like the initial reaction? It's panic. I have my best employee leaving. I don't know about you. I worked in a startup a while ago, and at that point in time, I'm originally from Nigeria, and at that point in time, startups, technology was just gaining ground in the country. And so my startup then was one of those startups that was just like early startups then, and we had like a lot of young people, the tech guys, and as many other startups were coming up, they were coming to already established startups to like poach from them, like offer them better money, offer them better things. So it's like, and then I was leading the HR team. So when you typically have someone come to say, hi, Yetunde, I need to have a conversation with you, might have to like skip, especially the tech guys, because they are like I'm like, oh God, where am I going to find the next person? And that's like sometimes like the reality of some leaders. It's like somebody comes to say, or send you an email, hi, I need to have a chat with you. It's like, okay, something's about to happen. So the initial reaction is, this person, I'm not going to lose this person. So a leader that basically reacts based on their gut feeling is, okay, you're going to tell the HR BP or HR manager to say, how much did they offer you? We're going to counter the offer and give you something else. That's it. But think about a leader that thinks or decides based on data. The initial reaction isn't going to be like panic. It's more like, what's my data say? Okay, you want to resign? Okay, let me get back to you. You're looking at your data. You're asking questions. What's the performance rating of this person over the years? Yes, Johnny is a high-performing person right now. As Johnny being a high-performing employee in the past, what's the data showing me? What's the trend? You're looking at the retention rate. Even looking at what the strategic goal of your business or your line of business is. What if, what Johnny does right now, we're going to, like in the next 5 years, move on to something else? Is Johnny's skills still going to be relevant at that point in time? So those are questions that, a manager that has data would look at before making that counter offer or, making that decision. Okay, so let's look at another example, which is when we talk about diversity. A lot of organizations have DEI goals. We need to meet this number and higher numbers. And a lot of times we're focused based on, this is what the goal is. We need to meet this goal. What that means is we need to hire people. But sometimes it's beyond that. When you look beyond just focusing on tracking those numbers. It could be we're not missing these goals because we have like high attrition. It could be we're not meeting these goals because our pipeline to like some leadership roles, we don't have enough pool within those pipeline. It could be movement within the organization. Are we having a lot of people moving from this department to other departments and we're not having the same thing? But when you don't have that insight or that information, you're just basically focused on it's hiring. And you're forgetting the part of like there's inclusion that also has impact in terms of like when you even hire people, how do you get them to stay? Another example, and I'll give a typical example in like one of projects I'd done. I'd worked in an organization that had a lot of entry level, which is like your management trainee employees, and they spend a lot of time in terms of like training those management employees because they're trying to imbibe the culture of the organization into them. So like they're just coming out of they're just graduating from colleges, you're training them, this is how we do our things. I went through that training as well. It's like a 4 months training, they're like teaching you so that when you get into the bank, this is how things are done. But these are like young people they're like still entry-level positions, but you have like senior leaders within those organizations that they had to hire from or get from like other banks. But one of the issues then was high attrition within the leadership team. And the project I did was basically to pull the data for like the past 10 years, the attrition data, and looking at it from what the people that we've had, where did they come from? And layering that with the exit interview data to say what are the feedback we're getting, when people leave. And what I was able to find is the tie between people that come from a particular financial sector into that organization. They were having issues, basically, with the culture of the organization, because they came from a different organization. They had their own culture. It was hard for them to like acclimatize with the culture within this organization. And that was like a very eye-opening insight that we took back to the leadership team, such that when you're interviewing people, it's more like you're driving more focus into how are you able to like acclimatize into this culture, because data has shown us. So it's not like we're going to have a conversation like this is how we feel. It's more like this is what we've done. We looked at the 10-year data, and this is the insights we found from that. So when we look at, this is another example of, imagine every morning or every day or, every morning or every week, a manager gets a nudge in their email saying, this is who you need to engage. Or let's say Tyler has a work anniversary today. So you understand how you're engaging Tyler, for example, because connection is built on a daily basis within a team. It's not just it's not when we feel like Tyler is going to resign that we start engaging Tyler. So, imagine having those kind of data in terms of like, this is how you should have performance feedback session with this person. This is, with the likes of AI, for example, you're able to like even ask questions, pull the data to say what has been the trend of Tyler's, for example's performance over the years, and how am I able to have those conversations. So imagine having a dashboard, for example, that shows you who you should engage, what should the conversations be about, so that you're building connection. It could also even be social connections as well within your team. Like, how can I build connection with this person? And that data provides you that insight. So basically, managers are not going to have that conversation from like like their blind spots areas. It's like they have clarity in terms of like, this is what the data is showing me. So the question now is, with this information in terms of like how we can empower leaders within HR and within the organization. I mean, before I go through how you can start adopting this, I was having a chat today with someone, and we were talking about how sometimes it's hard to understand what people need. Because a lot of times within our people analytics teams, we're basically, and I know like some speakers have also spoken about that, we're basically sitting behind our desk and thinking, this is the data I have, and this is the insight I can pull from this data and provide to the leaders. But are we going out of our space to get to understand what the pain points are for those leaders? And I'll give an example. I said I'm from Vancouver. When I come to Toronto, one of the things I try to do is to have conversations with some of my clients. And it's not from, this is what I can do for you. It's like, take me through what your day looks like. just take me through what you do. What do you do on a daily basis? And from those conversations, like, oh, do you know you can use data for this? Do you know my team can actually help you? And from people analytics perspective, we're helping leaders or teams beyond just providing them data. It could also be from like, you use Excel for this, but you know that we can build like a Power App to help you do this and like save you time that you don't have to do that. Or you refresh this data on a monthly basis. You don't have to do that. There are like software reports that you can do that. You just have to push a button and then it refreshes. So I want us to think from that perspective of like, we're not just going to be sitting behind our desk or just assuming that this is what should be done, to like getting out to understand what are those pain points of the leaders and how do we help them solve that. And in terms of like getting started where you are, one thing you need to bear in mind is to keep things simple. You know, some of them are used to the data, and it's also possible you've experienced that with HRBPs. We've seen that in some part of our businesses, some businesses are data savvy and some HRBPs are data savvy. Some are not really that data savvy. So you need to understand where each person or each team is or each leader is, and then present data to them based on, you know, what they need. We're not providing a one blanket or one approach. It's like a personalized approach to giving data. So you want to keep things simple. Avoid complex data and begin with very few key insights. One way to score a point with your product or whatever you're giving is, what is the person's pain points? What is that leader's pain points? You know, and then approaching things from that. Another way is you need to foster a data-driven culture. And how do you do that? You want to make data very actionable and relevant. You want to deliver insights. One of the things we do within my team is we try to make, you know, our dashboards, our insights very easy on the eyes and very insights-driven. It feels as if you're looking at a news article or like something from the internet that is very cool and easy to, you know, so that someone that is looking at those dashboards is interested and like you're focusing like on the key insight. You want to ensure you make align analytics with business and leadership priorities. That is very, very key. If you're presenting something that does not address a problem like right now, the possibility of getting the uptake on that is very, very slim. Also, you want to embed analytics into leadership conversations. We want to make, you know, analytics like a daily partnership situation within our conversations with leadership or HR business community. So you want to keep those conversations going. Use nudges for just-in-time data. Like I said, I gave an example of like, imagine receiving a nudge in your mailbox to say this is the kind of engagement you should have with your team. This person needs like a developmental training, or this is what your employees survey is showing, or this is what your attrition data is showing based on exit interviews. You know, so we're helping them and giving them those insights and nudges in terms of this is how I can make your work better. Another way is that you can get them started is upskilling them. You know, short practical learning sessions you can have with them. Like I said, you need to, and a good example, you could decide like, oh, within this quarter, we're gonna have a roadshow where we're teaching, you know, people how to use data. We're embedding analytics from, and you're looking at people from like, where are you currently? Are you just getting started from like using data, or where are you someone that already uses data, but we want to take you to like using predictive models? And when I talk about predictive models for like users, we're not looking at building like very complicated machine learning. It could just be, you know, I create a Power BI dashboard that if you key in a number at the background, it populates and tells you that if this number of people leave your team, this is how it's going to impact your DEI goals. You know, very simple and easy to use. And then it's very important that you measure the impact of what you're doing. You're continuously measuring the impact of the things you've put in place and getting feedback. That's very, very key. And then on an ongoing basis, you want to make sure, like I said, data is part of your daily workflow of managers. You want to integrate analytics into your existing tools, your HR platforms. You know, if, for example, you have like a performance management system, think about how you can integrate insights, data into that. You know, think about the different software or platforms that you have, how are we integrating data to that? It could be as simple as sending emails in Teams or on from Outlook to say, this is what data, and I'll give an example. Imagine you give, every quarter, you have to send reports to managers showing them what their turnover data is. So it just basically shows you, this is what your turnover data is for this quarter. And you can send that email out. But is it also possible that when you send that email out, you're telling the manager that, have you kind of noticed that the data for this particular team reporting to you, the turnover number has been trending up? You know, so there are ways that we're providing information. We can provide information from like, this is the data you need, or we can provide information like, this is data you need, but also this is like insights or like recommendations on how you can solve this problem. Another way is to keep the engagement ongoing is to deliver actionable bite-sized insights. And I just gave an example of that. Use nudges and reminders. You want to try to automate timely notifications between your, you know, a good example is your engagement score dropped, and here's what you can do to encourage proactive action. Showcase success stories, that's very, very key. When you want to get buy-ins, you want to showcase people that are already doing it and having impact. You can have even data champions within your leadership team. You know, this person is doing this, this is what they've been able to achieve using data. And then offer continuous learning and support. I talked about that. You can workforce insights, webinars within the team. You know, you can have forums, you can use chat, you can use Viva, some Microsoft Teams platforms within your team to have those kind of forums, questions where people can, you know, get information and ask questions and get answers. Yeah, so that's about it. I don't know if anyone has any question. I think, yeah. So someone's going to bring the mic to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was great. And I totally agree with whatever you suggested, how to get the leaders on board with the training, providing training, and get them data savvy and understanding the analytics. How do you measure the adoption? How do you measure the leadership's adoption? How do you know if they are using it in their day-to-day? Do you have any measures in place? Do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah, thank you for that. So in terms of measuring adoption, one of the ways we can do that is from the, like I gave an example of like the forums that you can have getting like this particular team is already doing this, how can we get your feedback in terms of how is it working and what's not working? We can use surveys, for example, because it's very important that you have data. If you're speaking about data, you want to have data to like measure the impact of what you're doing. So one of the ways is like, oh, we can have survey forms to send to like leadership team. Which one of, what are like some of our products that you're using? What's your feedback? How can we do it better, or what can we do better? What would you like to see more? So those are ways that, for example, you can get to like measure the impact of that. Success stories, for example, is also another one. When you have success stories from like different teams that have adopted using data and how it's impacted, how it's made the work of that manager, you know, better in terms of like efficiencies. That's another way we can get the feedback and measure impact of what we're doing. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the use case specifically around the manager that has someone that's leading. I think there's a lot of people that can appreciate that. I'm curious, do you have something that orchestrates pulling a holistic view of the data? So tenure, performance, that a leader can go to be able to see that full picture. I'm always looking for that holistic view, and I'm curious if in any of the organizations that you've worked with that you mentioned, there's been something that orchestrates that and brings it all together.
Thank you for that question. So for my team right now, what we use is Workday. And like I've had that conversations with people like, what do you use? We use Workday. I have someone that they're just implementing Workday in their organization. She wants like, what do you think about Workday? Workday is good, but my team, we plug into Workday, pull the data out, and use Power BI to build dashboards. And in my engagement or in our engagements with HR BPs and leaders, it's like sometimes the information what you're looking for is in Workday. So we point you to Workday, like, you can get this in Workday. But we can do something better. We can pull different parts of that data from Workday and build something that shows you a better and clearer insight. So a typical example would be a workforce plan dashboard that shows you, the tenure of people within your team or within your region. And it shows you, for example, how many people have left within that time, and also shows you this is the data from the exit interview, which is also from like a different platform. So we're pulling everything together, and I think that's the beauty of people analytics and the skill we possess, the ability to like pull into different software that we use and layer data on each one of them and build those insights. I can layer DEI data, for example, on turnover data and give you some insight. So that's beyond just giving you turnover numbers, but showing you another layer to look at this is how this is impacting your DEI goals. Or another way to look at this is how this is impacting, for example, the feedbacks you're getting from your exit interviews. So even from like compensation data as well, layering all that into. So think about building like a dashboard that pulls into different aspects of data that you have access to and showing insights by just layering in different sets of data into that to like bring out more insights. Okay, so I think my time is up now. Thank you very much. And if you have any other questions, you can always meet up with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.